Welcome to Deer Talk Now. I'm Brad Rucks. With us is Lee Lakosky, longtime friend with deer and deer hunting. Lee, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, Brad.
So today I want to talk, you're about the only one I know that's more of a trail camera freak than I am. I mean, we run thousands and thousands of pictures. So I want to go through a little bit and educate the people what you've learned with using cameras and how you use them.
Okay, sounds good.
So let's go first. Where's your strategy on trail camera placement? Where are you looking to place your cameras?
Well, it starts out like now. I mean, I keep cameras out year round, and a lot of times just to see when they shed and everything else. I you know I don't use cameras so much like to let's say to kill a particular deer, and I don't know. You see even apps and some things going that are okay, you find this deer here, here, and here, and try to learn their patterns and things like that. I know, like for me, I know our farms, pretty well, and for me, I use them more for inventory almost than anything else. Like throughout the whole summer, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. We have feeders, and we're talking about in the last podcast that it's not obviously deer have all the food in the world here. It's Iowa, and we've got fields and farms everywhere. It's more to take inventory. And of course, it's for health reasons and all that other stuff that we feed in the feeders, but that was for another podcast. We have all the food in the world. It's not that we need feeders, to feed them. It's basically to keep them healthy, like we talked about in the last podcast. But if we have like a 17-acre, we have some big food plots, like 17-acre bean field. If I wanted to take an inventory on that, I'd need 100 cameras on every trail that comes out of that thing. But we have a feeder in the corner. Most deer will come out. Everything will come and hit that for 10 minutes and go out into the bean field. So just have one camera on a feeder like that, we can take great inventory of them. And that's really my biggest concern or the biggest thing that cameras help me with is just taking that inventory. And that's like all summer, just knowing where they're at. And we have lots of feeders. It's not like we have one, like we talked a little bit last podcast about, concerns of CWD and things like that. So we have a lot of feeders on every farm, and they're always on food plot corners, because we just want them to be using those food plots anyway. Sure. And so each one of them, like I said, when you would get a deer to over 5, you'll see them on one food plot and one feeder, even though the other ones might be 300 yards away. Their home range becomes so much smaller. So you learn from that, even just having, those food plots, and having cameras on that, where their home area is, and becomes very small once they hit 5. Older. So that tells me a lot right there, even, okay, which feeder and which food plot are they using? Because that's going to be close to where they're living. And so it kind of tells me, okay, this is basically the 40 or 80 that I can count on hunting them in. And then, so it's basically for inventory. And then when we get to the hunting season, we'll move them to scrapes and a lot of things like that as well. But a lot of that is just to make sure that they're still there, number one. And like, it's a good example. Like this year, I had a buck that was 6 that I was going to hunt, and where he was all summer, I had a good, hey, this is where we're gonna hunt him. And I always like to shoot. If I have a big one, I want to shoot him right away in October. October, I feel like they're safe. They're bedded someplace. They're coming to food. They're bedded someplace, coming to food. They're kind of doing the same thing, and that doesn't mean they're doing it during daylight. But if you see a weather system coming or a cold front, you can guarantee they're going to be in there, or just about guarantee that they're going to be in there. So we had this big 10 that was coming to the field all summer, and I had watched him since at 5. At 5, he had split 2s, at 4 and 3, and at 5, he didn't. And I knew he was going to put him back on, so I just leave him to 6. And of course he did, and he was bigger than ever at 6. So the first couple of days I went out and hunted him, I saw him both days. And it's funny because it's a little tiny food plot that he was in. I was like, okay, this thing is like not like 3/4 of an acre. So it's small. Wow. And I was like, all you got to do is step in here and we're going to shoot him. But the first time he came in, and he was like at 60 yards, about as far as you could get out of the corner, he went and hit a scrape over on the side. And there he was like at 50. And it was like, well, why shoot him at 50? I mean, it's small. You should just come in here and feed like he's been, and you could shoot him at 20. Then he walked all the way along the edge of the field till he was like right underneath us. And then there's my camera guy couldn't see, and I don't like shooting that shot anyway. I was like, let's wait till he gets out in the field. And then he walked back. We have a pond back, and he walked back over the pond and he never came back in. So I was like, gosh, I had him at 2 yards and never got out. And then I went out again and saw him again. And he did the same thing almost, but on the other side of the field. So he just kind of was in there and took a couple bites, and he looked back and there's some does going through, and he just kind of walked off over that way and didn't get a shot. And then there was another, but then I went and looked at a couple other bucks, and then I happened to shoot one of our other big ones that was like 204, and I was like, okay, I shot a 200. It's a Tiffany go over there, but she had some bucks that she was hunting. But anyway, it got to like later October, and all of a sudden he was gone. He was like the king of that farm. So they're like the first ones that are boom off with doe someplace. Yep. And so like Tiffany had been hunting him on and off, and she's in that same little field, like in the middle of October, she had the same things happen with her. Like 2 times she saw him, and it's so funny because that small of a field, I think, how are they going to come in there and you not get a shot at him? But it happened 4 times with that deer in that field with Tiffany and I both, that he didn't come close enough to us. Close enough, but like I said, for mule deer or elk or something like that, you might have to take longer shots, but we don't do that so much with whitetails. You've gotten to the point not that we haven't shot some far, but when they're regular and they past 5, there's such a small area, just wait them on. If you don't have that perfect shot, just wait, you'll see them again. No sense of wounding them and then have them gone, you never get another shot at them. So anyway, that he disappeared right away. And so we knew, that he's in that area, but now that's when those cameras really come in handy. So, where we really use them for that, because then we put up cameras like even in the timber, and we put them up on, there was another food plot to the north, that just another little tiny one that he'd be up there some too, but he was mostly in the middle. So like, I told Tiffany, I want to go up because I'd already been done. And I was like, now we're talking in the middle of November. And he just very sparse. Make it one picture of him here or there. And I said, I want to go with you because let's go set up a stand for you. And I want to rattle that buck in for you. And I don't want to be filming either. So let's put up a triple stand. So we went out on this ridge. I said, this is where we're going to find them, and this is where we're going to rattle them in. And so all that stuff you look at, if you want to rattle one in, that gets a whole nother story. Because you got to see, you can't have it to a spot. You want to find a ridge. When they come from any direction, they can't see over the other side, because if they can see everything up there and they don't see anything, you're not bringing them in close enough. There's a whole other strategy on where you can put a stand for that and everything. But if we did a triple stand for the first time ever, we had to, hunting stand for me, and the stand for the camera guy. But so we found a perfect cedar tree and everything. I said, let's just set that there and we'll just wait. And so there was a big scrape in there too. And so I had a camera on that, and one on each of the little fields, north and south, and then another one in the timber. And it took, it was a while. It was like late November. And all of a sudden I had like 3 pictures of them on all those. I didn't have one in the timber where we're at, but on both the food plots, and then even on the south end, which is like out of his core area. So he's out out looking for doe. Yeah. So we got out there that next morning, hit the antlers, boom, there he comes. And he stopped, and because all the does went running up over the next ridge of buck chasing. So he went over the next ridge chasing the does around, and then he saw that they weren't hot, so then he just started leaving. So again, I said, let's just leave him. Don't try to rattle again. He already heard the first time. Just leave him a few minutes. But I just want to make sure. It's like, I want to get him out of sight, but not leave him as long as I thought that we could, because it would, just kind of get his mind off of the first rattling sequence. So we waited, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes where I didn't see him going up the other side. So I figured he was still down in there somewhere. So he rattled again, boom, there he came up again from the side down there, and he was just staring up there, because I was looking up the ridge. It wasn't from the side. Like most of the time from the sides, they can't see over the other side. They have to come. But now he's looking right up the ridge, and he can't see anything. But we even picked that. We did with cedars. There's a big deadfall there that you can't really see behind it. That's why we picked that cedar tree. So we gave him a minute. He just sat there staring. There was another little buck down by him. He was kind of looking back at that one once in a while. So as soon as he looked away, I just gave him a snort wheeze, and that was it. He had to come. Boom. He just couldn't take it, and bam, shot him. But that's a perfect example where cameras help you shoot one, and it wasn't like to find out where he was. I knew where he was living, and I knew that he was the most dominant buck on that farm. You just have to wait till he's in between those, And that's the time the rattling is going to work. If he's with a doe, you can rattle all day long. You're just wasting your time. You're bringing in other little bucks are coming in and getting educated to your spot and everything else. Let's just stay out of here until we start getting some pictures of them. So that's where cameras really come in handy for where we use them like that. But, we don't, I mean, on such a big scale, we have so many cameras out. It's like we're not trying to find an individual buck and find where he's traveling. His core areas. And if it's early season or late season, what food source, and you're just going to wait them out there, because we have the time they're going to show up. If that's where they're at, you just wait for that right weather pattern, you're going to see them.
And once you have that history, right? I mean, you have that history of that buck, what he likes to do in September, what he likes to do in October, what he likes to do in November.
Absolutely.
And when they do it from 4, they normally do it when they're 5, and he'll probably do it again when he's 6, right?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, talking even at 3 years old is they kind of, you see what part of the farm, but they're wandering a lot. You'll get them almost on all the cameras at 3. At 4, less they start getting, you kind of start seeing where they're establishing themselves. At 5, boom, that's it. And so you know what food source they're going to be on. And, and during the rut, it's like, okay, all I have to know is he's in between does. And a lot of times there isn't any time in between. I mean, they may be with one, another buck comes chasing a hot one by, and they'll just leave that one because it's kind of at the end, and boom, they just knock that buck out of there on the next one. Yeah. That was the deal with this deer. I mean, we didn't even have a picture of him for 3 weeks, and all of a sudden, boom, we showed back up again. And then he was gone again. And then when he showed back up, it was late, later in November when we had those 3 pictures of him. And I was like, all right, he's in between. We got to get out there right now. But you have to wait some time until that bell curve of does that are in ester starts waning, that it's a little harder for him. You can't just pop from one to another, and that's when you're going to find them. But that's kind of our strategy overall, is more inventory than specific. It's not like you're going to let's put it on these trails. What trail is he walking out and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really matter to me because we have lots of trails. Like even in that little food plot, he came in 2 times, one time for me, one time for Tiffany from the left side, and then one time for me, one time for her from the right side. So they're coming off the same ridges, but it's not like you can find, hey, I need to put a camera or a stand on this trail, because they're not going to take the same trail every single day. And we just need to know the general area.
Yeah.
And your farm, you'll be able to hunt them.
I think a lot of guys make that mistake where they get that picture of him in that scrape and then they immediately go there, right? So they're always chasing. That deer is always one step ahead of them and they never meet up. You know what I mean? So what I like to use the cameras for is, if he's in one area 60% of his time, I'm probably going to wait him out. You know what I mean? I'm going to sit in my best stand where I can get in and out without any kind of, disruption, and just wait till he comes and then shoot him.
For sure. And that's like October, early season and late season, always that way. Basically one spot. And that's what we were talking about in the last podcast too, about, if people think you have like no pressure. It'd be nice to hunt your farm, your big farm with no pressure. No pressure. We hunt every single day, and every neighbor has got stuff all over the place. It's like the way that, we do it is like, we are out all the time, like in the summer, and so people, and we're checking cameras and checking feeders and out doing, taking soil samples, stuff like every field here, at least twice a week, I'll be in there doing something. So deer get used to you doing that, being in there, and they become comfortable with you. And a lot of times we have feeders in there. It's like bear hunting. We go, every time I go out there, I hit the button, make sure the feed is flowing good and everything else. So 5 minutes after we leave, you can check your cell cameras, and boom, they're all coming in. They're all standing there. So so all year they're associating me with positive stuff, food or minerals and things like that. So when it gets to the hunting season, we kind of hunt it the same way. You're in there, 2, 3, 4 times a week, maybe a little bit more than in the summer, but they're not freaking out from you being there. But the difference is you just have to make sure that if there's deer in that field, you got to stay till it's black dark out. If you try to get out or move in when it's gray dark, deer are total different animals when it's black dark compared to gray dark. So, people are like, how do you get out? And we do a lot of stuff with screening and things like that, how to get in and out. But, even if they don't see you, they're going to know you're there. I mean, throughout the day. I mean, people, they put a lot of, I think, more attention to that egress and, getting in and out than maybe is warranted. I mean, I'd never like them to see me and all that stuff, of course, when you're getting in and out. But I still think you look at a dog, if they can put them on a fugitive that had their window open and they know what exit they came off of and stuff like that. If you think that you're walking behind a screen and walking out of there, and sometime over the night when they're walking around that they don't smell that you've been in there, you're crazy. But they smell people all the time. Let's face it. Where deer live, there's people. If they were going to freak out every time they smelled a human, they'd be running till they'd never stop.
Yeah.
So they're used to that kind of stuff. And a lot of times, like I said, if you wait till it's just black dark out, most of the time they might just run to the edge of the field and look at you, and then they just come right back out as soon as you leave. But I think that's why we try to make sure that we have a presence throughout the year there, where they're not freaking out about your presence. And heck, myself, we wrote articles about keeping sanctuaries and don't go in there and keep everything, which is fine, good for not bumping deer out during hunting season. But the thing is, you'll learn that the more you're in there in the summer and doing things like the feeders and minerals and things like that you associate with positive stuff, the better off you are if you can be there
all the time,
consistent throughout the summer. And a lot of people can't.
Yeah.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by, with more than 70 years of experience in the animal health and nutrition industries, Analogics Outdoors brings its unique expertise to the science of deer feed and attractants. For more information, visit analogics.com.
So you do a lot with feeders. What about in the states where the guys can have feeders? What you got any tips there? What they do? I like to use licking branches because it seems like they gravitate towards those same spots in a food plot. If I'm on a 2-acre food plot, whatever it is, I got a licking branch in there, and the does will hit it year round, and so will the bucks. I mean, they'll definitely come to scent check it a little bit. It's not like they're spending a lot of time, but I'm definitely doing my inventory using that. Anything you use?
For sure. I mean, it's because we have a big farm in Illinois too, where you can't. And you're exactly right on that. We do the rubbing posts out there, and deer will hit those all year long. And it is way harder to get inventory down there. But what we've learned is water is making those water tanks. And like in the summer, like we have one, I was talking about our last podcast, I can look out my window right now and we have one right in our backyard, and you wouldn't believe the deer, they use that. Like in the summertime, it's like 100 gallons a week. Wow. But in the wintertime, it's like 250 gallons a week on those things. It's amazing how much they use those. And we've, obviously from the back in the days of Buffalo County, Wisconsin, all the water holes and also it's been around forever. But even for me here, we had lots of ponds and stuff, started realizing how important that water is and having more of it and smaller pieces. Like, I had lots of ponds. I would dig them deep so they don't evaporate out. And I started noticing like the ponds that were really are doing the best are the ones that are really shallow. So you're trying to, just learning what they like and stuff, but you wouldn't believe you put a water trough out like in Illinois on some of your like alfalfa fields or whatever, how many deer are coming to that in the summertime and still getting inventory on those things.
And that's even when you got a creek or other water sources there, right? They like those smaller little areas. I mean, it's amazing. That's one of the things that opened up my eyes as well. We used to have a round pen with a horse trough in it, right? The deer would come across the road and walk right through a creek and come over there and drink out of the horse trough, nonstop.
100%. And you can see that in antelope hunting. If you got, a water trough and it's an overflow and goes to a little muddy spot, every animal will go and they drink out of that little muddy spot. And there's, we're doing a lot of stuff on that too. A friend of mine, Kevin Boyer, who owns Elite Consulting, he's been a friend of mine. He's got a consulting business. I mean, he is, like I call him the dirt wizard because it's with soils and all that kind of stuff. He's incredible. But we started really doing a lot of work on taking water samples out of these ponds. You got all these ponds. Why are they using this one more? Is it something with the dirt that's in there? Is there some mineral or some salt or something that's getting into these things? So we're taking all these water samples and sampling those too and seeing why they're using these ones. And those are those things that you might develop, something that we can put in ponds that make them like those ponds more. Why are they using that one? So we're trying to figure that puzzle out right now. We just started that last year, so we'll have to get back to you next year on this and see what we've found out about that. But especially in those states where you can't, put feeders or bait or anything, the water has been making a big difference for us.
That's fascinating that they use some of the ponds more than others. I never thought about
Yep.
it, but they absolutely do. So
Yeah, for sure.
the other thing is, so I wanted to bring up with trail cameras, the technology. I mean, you were around when they used to be the old picture, right? You're taking a roll of film in there. And now with them being digital, right? Everything's digital. It doesn't matter if you put it on a food plot or a mineral lick or like you put it on your food source, right? I mean, how many pictures are you getting off of a feeder in a day? It's got to be hundreds, right?
Thousands.
Thousands? Yeah.
I mean, not maybe on one, but I'm talking. I have cell cameras, just to have like 200 of them out. So I mean, it's 2 hours every morning flipping through, and 2 hours at night flipping through just to look at them. I mean, flipping through as fast as I can. Just boom, stop and save that one. Flip, But yeah, it's incredible the amount of time there. Like on a feeder, they could care less if there's a camera there.
Yeah.
But other places, you got to be more careful. Like on scrapes and stuff, we do some other things. A lot of times, I'll put cameras in different strategically for scrapes that you can get more pictures of them there. Because a lot of times, some deer don't care at all. You remember back in the old flash days, even. Some deer could care less. That flash could be blasting them in the eyeballs every day, but other ones, man, they just walk right around it.
It's amazing to see that when you're in a tree stand. Like for me, if it was one of my local deer that got their picture taken all through life, it didn't matter, right? But here comes this transient 3-year-old that you've never seen before, and when that thing would take his picture, like right at prime time, man, you saw him turn inside out, and he'd be on your neighbors before you even knew it. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But
yeah, like especially on scrapes, if you have one like right on the tree, right on the scrape tree, and you'll get a few, and then all of a sudden you see it dying out, and it's like, not that they're leaving your farm or even that food plot. They just started on one 10 feet over. Someone just like, what's that? Mom's going to use this one over there. So a lot of times now we have one of those spy high
branches, like
well, it's supposed to drill it on so you can get the cameras up high.
Yeah.
We do that like in Montana for sure, because elk are like cows. They see a camera there, they'll go rubbing, they'll knock it and break it off the trees and stuff. So you got to get them high for elk out in on our Montana place. But we started doing that for deer too, to put it up high where it's out of their eyesight. I mean, higher than you can reach. I mean, you'd have to climb up the tree or something. But you can put all the pieces together you want and get it up high, and normally not on the scrape tree. We're on something next to it where it's the pictures are facing down on it. And sometimes you don't get as nice of a picture like ground level right in its face kind of thing. It doesn't come from the top, but at least you can put that camera up and you leave it there all year, and they keep hitting it all year long. They're not moving to something else. So that's one of the things we do to kind of keep from having to move them around all the time on those scrapes. But they'll definitely, even with the no flash and the black flashes and all that stuff, just having that box on there and see how many come up and stare at it. They take a few pictures of them, but then you won't get any more.
Yeah,
and we have to again to get them.
I always wondering if they don't hear something in the camera, like either when the electronics fire up or something that you and I can't hear, because they definitely can tell when that thing's, even with a black flash, they know when it's going off. So when you look at them,
and you don't know if it's when it's going off. They're just looking at this strange box that's sitting on the tree. Yep. Every deer is different. Some of them could care less, and some of them turn inside out. And it's just, they have, just like people, their personalities are different. And some of them are so skittish about it, scared of their shadow, and other ones could care less.
This episode is also brought to you by Gamehide. At Gamehide, the philosophy is pretty simple. Design the best products with the best fabrics and features to help you be more successful in the field. While doing this, they strive to keep their pricing moderate to give you the best value in the hunting clothing industry. I wear the Limit Tick line of clothing to keep those nasty ticks off of me, and I absolutely love it. Check them out at gamehide.com.
So if a guy has, let's say he has 100 acres, how many cameras would you recommend that he runs?
That's hard to say, because there's sometimes, like on 100 acres, for me, I'd start out with how many food plots or feeders I had. And like if I had a 100-acre piece, which I do, I have several like that, where maybe I have one feeder on it and a couple of different food plots on it. You might start with one over the summer that to take inventory. But once I got into the year on that one food plot, I might have 6 cameras on one food plot, just on one little spot, and I might have 20 on that place. If there's a big one on there, because you see it so many times, like we were just talking about, how many of them kind of notice the camera and avoid it. And so many times you're sitting there, you got a camera like on a tree or on a scrape on there, and you see how many times you see deer come out there, and and I can have like on your cell camera, even on your cell phone, you're looking and say, boy, we never got a picture of that thing. Or you go check it, a card after, man, I've sat up there, I've seen that deer 3 times. I don't have a single picture of them. Like, they're just avoiding those cameras. So I don't want to ever miss one, especially with cell cameras. I want to know when they're there. So a lot of times I'll have, I've had as many as probably a dozen on a single small food plot, just so I don't miss them, and trails coming into it and this and that. So you're not missing. So, on 100 acres, I could have 100 cameras, or I could have one. It kind of depends. Like the one for inventory, but it's just, for me, it kind of depends on how big the deer is.
There you go.
If you have something that I want to keep an eye on, that might be a good 3 or 4 year old, I'll put a bunch up there. But if it's, let's say like the first 200-inch deer that I shot was on an 80-acre piece that we had. And that year, I probably had 40 cameras on there. I just didn't want to miss, like, hey, when is he here? Because obviously he didn't live on there on 80 acres. He was there a lot, but he obviously was on neighboring pieces a lot too. So I wanted to know every time that he was there. And that was before cell cameras even, I just did really, obviously those just, I don't even know if they were out, whatever that was 7 years ago or 6 years ago.
Yep.
So we had lots of them. We were checking them every afternoon. Basically, I just wanted to make sure that we were keeping tabs on the best that we could.
I love them. I just like some of the unique pictures. What's the most unique non-white-tailed picture that you've ever gotten? And I'm going to tell you mine.
Well, we have lots of them, and it's hard to say. We had coyotes with a deer head in his mouth walking off. We've got, bobcats with pheasants in their mouth. Just, get neat nature stuff like that. And it just, I think some of my favorite pictures I ever had was like a sun was just setting. There was one of my big bucks standing in front of it, and then another one of our bigger ones that was maybe 20 yards behind it. So it's right in between.
Sweet.
Yeah, there's double of them. It was like an orange sunset background, just beautiful. But there's so many cool things that you get all the time on them.
I agree. So the rarest thing, or the most unique thing, I got a picture of a peacock. We're in Wisconsin, right? There's no peacocks, and he was living with 2 turkeys. What the heck's a peacock doing on my place?
Really?
We have no clue where he came from. And my son was younger at the time, and he's like, Dad, that's a peacock. And that, when you're looking at the first picture, I was like, that's not a peacock. Next picture, yeah, that was a peacock. You could see his whole tail. You could see everything. It's like, what in the world?
Yeah, I had a pot-bellied pig on one time too. I don't know any neighbors that have little pot-bellied pigs, and you're like, well, hopefully there's no hogs down here in Iowa, which there isn't. And I don't know where he came from. I only had one picture of him. And then also I had like the oddest picture that I had, and I never saw the deer, but he was there quite a bit. That year was like a midget deer. He was like a miniature deer, and he had, just tiny, the real bull-legged and big big giant knees. But he was like so funny sitting next to them. He was maybe the size of a lab, of a smaller lab.
Yeah.
That was, and he had horns, and stuff, but standing next to all the regular sized bucks, he's like half the size. I still have those on my phone even. They're crazy.
Yeah, it's fun. That's what's so cool about cameras and running a lot of them. Like, as I said, you're running, you said 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. How many guys in the industry spend 4 hours a night? So that's why I kind of wanted to get you on here so that people understand. Yeah, you're shooting a lot of big deer, right? But you're putting in the time. You're putting in the effort.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to bring up food plots just for a second. How much time do you spend in a tractor? Think about that. When we wrote the book, you were in the tractor nonstop.
It's nuts. I had to have PRP injections in my elbow. Just this, I know, by the way, that worked phenomenally if you have like tennis elbow or a ripped tendon in there. But that's from being in a tractor literally for 100 days straight, pushing that lever forward and backward with sprayers and everything else. And that's what tore a ligament in my elbow from constant every day moving that. Because my newer tractor, my bigger tractors we use your fingers to do it, but I had the one that I had particularly for planting last year, was an old one that you had to jam it forward to keep the hydraulics running to spin the blower on the hydraulic pump for the sprayer and the blower for the planter. So I just, so we're definitely using a different one this year, but that was 100 days of and jamming that back and forward on thing. But it's, well, like I'm just looking at, thing today of food plots, and I don't have my new ones updated in there because we bought a couple of different farms and stuff over these. So we're always updating stuff like that, but it had like 117 food plot fields. So you figure, some of them are 20 acres down to a quarter of an acre or half an acre, but they're all over, 40 miles almost from my farthest north to my farthest south. So you're moving equipment and tractors and sprayers and stuff. So it's basically constant every day from the minute you can get in there. Like we've already been like frost seeding and stuff. Of course, it's still too early to be disking and fertilizing and stuff like that, but it's not too far off. But once we start there, I mean, by the time I finish, it's, first weeks of June, but then you go right from June, once you finish all your clover, alfalfa, and corn and beans, you're right into, okay, now what are we doing for our brassica, plots like that? Okay, now we're starting fertilizing and doing all those fields. We do the whole route again.
Yep.
At the farm, we'll have our turnip and rape, mixes and winter wheats and oats and grains and different things like that. So you just start right over again, and you go in fertilizing all those and disking, getting it ready. So I start planting about the middle of July. A lot of those things, it's like, you wouldn't really necessarily want to start them until August 1st or something like that. But I have so many, you can't really wait until then, because a lot of times you just, if you knew when it was going to rain, okay, you want to get everything in if it's so important for those fall ones. But normally here it's so hot and dry in July, and if you got to take that risk of putting it in, because they'll just sit in that dust until you get the rain on it. But if you get like a tenth of rain or something, just enough to germinate it, and then there's no moisture in there, you'll kill them, they'll die. So you take all those risks and something but normally what I'll do is I'll go through and do everything, and I can usually finish up those by around the first or second week in August. And then the ones, if something happens like that doesn't make it, you always have the winter wheat for like September 1st. At the last part of August, we'll go in and hit them with the winter wheats and oats and things like that. But it's basically every day from August until we leave out west hunting. I mean, that you're in tractors or your skid steers and cleaning or doing something with creek crossings, or it's every day for sure. There's no weekends off or anything.
Yeah, but it's a labor of love, right? I mean, that's what we do.
Oh, yeah.
We're addicted to whitetails. That's kind of what it is.
Absolutely. When I was an engineer, I hit my snooze 3 times before I got out of bed. I haven't used an alarm in 15 years, and now here, sun is up, I'm up, and we're out doing something.
Gotta love it. It's a labor of love. Lee, I'm glad you came to the show. Your dog's happy that's on the show. I'm surprised it's not mine. I got my dog in the office right now, so normally it comes out if you're doing anything. But anyway, we appreciate having you on the show. Lee Lakosky, I'm Brad Rucks for Deer Talk Now. Check it on us out on all the podcasts. Till next Thursday.
Deer Talk Now is brought to you by 10 Point Crossbow Technologies. Whether I'm in a tree stand, ground blind, or spot and stalk hunting, I know the Nitro 505 is up to any challenge. Check one out at a dealer near you or log on to 10pointcrossbows.com for more information.